I'm sorry. Here's the CBX guys coming now. You've got to be careful of these ones, you know.
You learn something new every day. And I just realized today that your real name isn't Effin Scotty.
Yeah, I can't remember when I first met Gary because I discovered that when you meet Gary and you spend 5 minutes with him, it's like you've known him for a long time. It was like a comfortable jacket. He's just a great guy. But I remember when I first met him, I said, "Hey, you're from New York, aren't you?" And he said, "Well, how can you tell?" And I said, "Well, your accent." He said, "What accent?"
He was a good guy.
Yeah.
Just so many road trip stories.
So many road trips. Man, that trip that a bunch of us took out to West Virginia to a CBX rally, and he'd say, "Hey, are those banjos are here?" I said, "No, no, no, no. By the way, Gary, you got a pretty mouth." So we had so much fun up in Montana. Freezing our butts off.
Sure. Up at Flathead Lake. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's about 30 of us here today. If there'd be hundreds. I've gotten emails and text
From
messages.
wide and far.
Wide and far. Ian Foster in Hong Kong and people in Canada. Gary touched a lot of lives, and he touched ours. And my world's a little bit smaller.
All of
right
ours
now.
is. All of ours is. He was quite the storyteller too. I don't recall exactly where we were going, but we were on some road trip somewhere. And it was unusual that we were driving instead of riding the bikes. And he started going in and telling this story about a movie script idea that he had. And his story lasted, and I am not exaggerating, 150 miles. But I mean, it was one of those you didn't want to get up for a pee break, It was great. He was just a fantastic guy. He was a friend's friend, and you all attest to that here. There's just so many things about him. They say two things you don't do with friends is talk religion and politics. I think we disagreed on both, but over 20, 25 years, the friendship prevailed, and you always learned something from Gary. You could always pick out something either on what he did, or he reaffirmed your particular attributes and positions, and he was always there for you. You could always count on the guy.
It's obvious that he had so many different circles of friends, and I'm happy to be in one of them.
It's great, and one of the things that I learned from Gary was it's okay to hug another guy.
Yeah, but I
Thank you
wasn't
so
going to
much.
kiss him.
Gary was good at that. He says, "I'm going to tell you something." I said, "Is it going to be one of those fucking big long ones, or are you going to get to the point?" But it was great.
Hi, my name is John Remney. I apologize for being barefoot, but my sandals fell apart, so I said to myself, what the fuck? I am representing not representing, but I'm here with a group of people that met at our local park, Rustic Canyon Park, and we are the dog owners of Rustic Canyon, which is known as the Dorks. And Gary and Barbara were very, very dear members of our illustrious group. But I just want to share just a couple of stories with you, if I may. Jimmy and I were just sharing up above. I'm really impressed with all the people that have come out in Gary's memory. Jimmy and I were saying that the only way we'd get this many people out for us is we held a memorial before we passed. And Gary was very different than the rest of us. He was so loved by everybody. There was not anybody at the park that didn't hold Gary dear to their heart. I remember the first time I met Gary, actually. I had seen him at the park a little bit before we had formed Dorks, and a friend of mine who I had known for years, Alex, asked me to help him move. He was moving from Santa Monica to San Pedro, and so I showed up at his house, and there was Gary. And Alex is a voracious reader. He had 2 bedrooms filled with boxes, and they all had books in them. And if you've ever lifted boxes with books, it's going to be a long day. So Gary and I spent better part of 2 hours loading him into a U-Haul, and then Alex said, "Okay, we're all set. Let's go down to San Pedro." So he took off, and Gary and I jumped in my car, and we drove down. I had a chance to visit with him, get to know him a little bit, and we talked about family a little bit. And finally I said, "Hey, by the way," I said, "how long have you known Alex?" He said, "About a week or 2. And that was quintessential Gary. At the dog park, we have 2 rules. One is that you pick up after your own dog, so you don't leave a mess for somebody else. And the other is you make sure that your dog doesn't get into it with another dog. And of course, the best way to do that is to make sure that the male dogs are fixed. So, when Jack came to the park, Jack always came without a collar, and Gary had no intention of leashing Jack. And we were all kind of standing around one day talking about it, and we all looked over and we saw Jack. And now, I saw him walking around here, but if you haven't noticed, Jack has got cojones the size of cantaloupe. So it was not to be missed. And we all said, Gary, maybe you ought to think about fixing Jack. Jack goes off, he's going to really hurt a dog. I mean, you don't want to get in the middle of it. Just kind of stepped back. He looked at us. He had those cut-off T-shirts, whether it was winter or summer, and he said, "Nobody is fucking touching my dog's balls." And that was it. We knew where Jack stood. We knew where Gary stood, and God bless, we love them both. And there wasn't a morning that we didn't come to that park that Gary didn't say, "How you doing?" And you know what I mean, right? I mean, he hugged you with that hello, and he hugged you when you said goodbye. He didn't want you to leave. He just wanted to stand there and share with you, and we will love him and hold him in our hearts forever.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Bernie, and this is, say Isabel.
Isabel.
Okay. We represent the oldest and the youngest of the dorks. And one day Gary decided there's a conflict, and we didn't quite know how to resolve it. And he said, "Why don't you be the mayor? You fix the fucking problem." And from that day on, I've been the mayor. People see me on the street, I swear, they say, "Mr. Mayor." But at any rate, we have something, I know you all think you're special to Gary, but we had him 365 days a year. That's every day, unless he was dining with Scotty at a Denny's or something. But we thought we were the most special thing in Gary's life. Now I find out there's 700 people that feel exactly the same way. But I wonder if you'd help me, because I'm not gonna get mushy because so much has been said and we all feel all the same, but if you could help me remember with one act. He thought you're supposed to be there 7 and leave at 8, that's it. Well, I'd stroll in at 7:30 and want to leave at 5 to 8. I'd come in and every day, look at his watch. What the fuck? And it's time for me to leave 5 minutes early. Excuse me. What the fuck? And I'm wondering if I count to 3, if all of you would just look at your watch and say, 1, 2, 3. What the fuck? On behalf of our little group, our lives will never be the same, but I swear it's going to be so much better because we had Gary time, and I still feel he's going to come up on that ramp and say, "How'd you like that fucking joke?" But anyway, I want to say one other thing. Maybe the greatest gift that he left us was Barbara, and Barbara, I think, as important as Gary was to us, your continued friendship will also be. And that's all. What's anything?
Well, I have known Gary since I was 6 years old. And for you guys, it seems like, 6 years, Like, for me, that's more than half of my life, so. And And I remember when I was first young and we got our dog and I went to the park, I was kind of like scared by him, like this huge dog that kind of like, like towered over the other dogs, like no sleeveless shirts, even if it was like raining outside, like 7 feet tall, and I was like, and then, well, obviously I do not feel the same now, and I will miss him a lot. Like, I feel the same as what everyone has said. And, well, I guess he's just been like a part of my life, and I'm, we're still gonna like miss him at the park and everything. So.
I'm just an old New York Jew. I hardly know anybody here, but I was kind of married to Gary from 1965 to 71. We were each other's first business partner in New York. We were both ex-rock and roll, frustrated doo-wop guys, and we were friends. And it was at a time when both of us were not doing so well, but because of Gary's energy, I had trouble realizing that we were doing badly. It always felt like we were doing great. He lived that way, he spent that way, and eventually, I actually had a fairly successful career, and I don't think that would have happened. This just struck me today driving over here if it weren't for Gary, because he had the drive and the energy and the positive attitude and the balls to start our own company when we were, well, I was 21, he was older, he was 24. And we did it, and it grew into stuff, and then, like many relationships, we kind of had a divorce when we were kind of 7 years into it. But I really never think much about it until this week, about how much I owe Gary. And I just wanted to stand up and say that. I owe the guy a lot. You start to own your own stuff and forget that somebody else played a part, but he really played a big part in my life. The other thing I was struck is, Gary's a nice-looking guy, but he wouldn't make a good-looking woman. But he made some good-looking women, so obviously there's something about the genetics that really worked.